Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine being like really mad about getting just 3 acorns in the morning and 4 at night.
Right.
Then suddenly you're totally happy, ecstatic even, because you're getting 4 in the morning and 3 at night.
Uh-huh. Same acorns.
Exactly, same acorns, just flipped around. It really makes you think about how much our perspective, shapes how we feel about things, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And what's so fascinating is how that little story, that simple shift attributed to Zhuangzi, it kind of just explodes into this whole universe of thinking about perspective, about how we even understand the world.
Totally. And well, that's what this deep dive is all about for you. You sent over some uh, really interesting excerpts from Zhuangzi, this, well, amazing figure from ancient China, known for all these mystical, philosophical ideas.
Yeah, deep stuff.
Deep stuff, exactly. And it's not always, simple. It's complex, layered, and even the folks who've translated it over the years, the experts, they see things a bit differently sometimes.
Which brings us, yeah, right to a core issue, doesn't it?
Hmm.
How do we even talk about these ideas? I mean, if the language we're using might itself be sort of inadequate, falling short.
Right. So, our mission today, for you listening, is to dig into some of the core concepts in these pieces you sent. Those bits that might really spark a new way of looking at things. We want to find those aha moments,
Right.
without getting totally lost in like heavy academic arguments.
Sounds good. Let's hunt for those moments.
Well, where do we start?
Well, given Zhuangzi's own skepticism about language,
Mhm.
maybe that's the natural place. He pretty much says again and again that words just can't fully capture the essence of the true way.
Yeah, I noticed that. He even calls his own descriptions rough or reckless. That's pretty blunt.
It is. It's like he's acknowledging the limitation right there.
Like he knows he's using a tool that's not quite right for the job.
Exactly. Think about trying to explain, I don't know, the color red to someone born blind.
Hmm.
Words only go so far, right? And Zhuangzi's writing, it's full of these paradoxes, this poetic, sometimes confusing language. It really hammers home this feeling that there's something deeper, something, ineffable that words can't quite pin down.
And it looks like the translators really struggled with that. We saw mentions of different scholars, Giles, Legge, Whaley, Merton, all taking slightly different tacks, sometimes literal, sometimes more metaphorical. Must be incredibly tricky.
Oh, absolutely. Each translation kind of gives you a different flavor, a different shade. It highlights how the translator's own viewpoint shapes the outcome,
Hmm.
which, funny enough, actually proves Zhuangzi's point about language being fluid and maybe not quite sufficient.
Huh. Yeah, good point. Okay, now something else that jumped out were these descriptions of the Taoist sage. Almost like a superhero,
Uh,
in deep trances, immune to fire or water, maybe even immortal. This is where it gets really wild. Was he being literal here?
hmm. Well, the general feeling among scholars, and it makes sense when you look at the overall philosophy, is that these were probably meant as metaphors.
Hmm.
Powerful metaphors, sure. Zhuangzi was likely drawing on, the myths and religious ideas floating around back then, the magic stuff, to paint a picture of extreme inner freedom,
Yeah.
detachment.
So not like actual magic powers,
Probably not.
but more like an internal state, like being so centered that nothing can really touch you.
That's the idea, a state of being so in tune with the natural flow, the Dao, that everyday problems, external stuff, just doesn't stick. It washes over you.
But
But it's also fair to say that some later followers did take these descriptions quite literally.
Yeah.
People started developing practices trying to achieve actual physical immortality based on these texts.
okay, so the metaphor got lost somewhere along the way for some people.
Yeah, it shows how easily symbolic language can get kind of twisted or taken out of context.
Right. Okay, let's shift a bit. This next idea feels super relevant for just navigating life. Perspective. Zhuangzi talks about everything having its that and it's this. What's the core idea there for us?
Well, connecting it back, the main thing is that how we see anything is always relative, always. What's this for me right here is that for someone else looking from over there.
Okay.
And Zhuangzi really pushes us to try and understand things from that perspective.
Yeah.
Try to see it from the other side,
So like empathy, stepping into someone else's shoes.
Kinda, yeah, but maybe even broader.
Yeah.
He takes it further. He says, that comes out of this, and this depends on that. They sort of create each other.
They're linked.
Exactly. Interdependent. And this
Yeah.
isn't just abstract philosophy. He applies it to everything. Birth and death, good and bad, right and wrong. They aren't fixed absolutes. They exist because of their opposite.
Wow. So the conflict we feel often comes from just being stuck in our own viewpoint.
That's a huge part of it, yeah. Just
Mhm.
failing to even try to see it from the other angle. He suggests that if you can genuinely try to adopt that other viewpoint, even for a second, a lot of disagreements might just dissolve,
It's like the lines we draw are mostly in our heads.
pretty much. And the sage, for Zhuangzi, is the person who sees this. They can see the connection, see how this is also that, all under what he calls the light of heaven.
Okay, the light of heaven.
Yeah, and he talks about the hinge of the way. Imagine a door hinge is the point where the two sides meet, where the opposition stops being an opposition.
Ah, the pivot point.
Exactly. That pivot point, that understanding lets you be flexible, responsive. You're not stuck in rigid boxes. And the key to finding that hinge, he says, it's clarity.
Clarity, like seeing through the labels and boundaries we put on things.
Yes.
That seems to connect back to the language problem we started with. The words create the boxes.
Perfectly put. It's about moving past fixed judgments, seeing the flow.
Which flows perfectly into the next bit, the illusion of those fixed judgments. The 3 in the morning monkey story again. It's just such a brilliant example.
It really is. What's so smart about it is how it shows the emotional charge we attach to how things are presented.
Yeah, the monkeys were furious, then delighted.
But nothing actually changed for them.
Yeah.
It shows how easily our feelings, our judgments, get manipulated by just wording. Surface stuff makes you wonder how often that happens to us, right? These framing effects.
Oh, constantly, I bet. All the things we get worked up about where maybe the core situation isn't that different. And then this idea of the sage, the one who harmonizes with both right and wrong and rests in heaven, the equalizer. He's walking 2 roads. That sounds tricky.
It does sound tricky, but it's probably not about being wishy-washy, like, oh, anything goes.
Right.
It's more about seeing that even right and wrong are part of a bigger picture, a larger cosmic balance.
Yeah.
Heaven, the equalizer, isn't some judge up there. It's more like the ultimate state of balance where all these distinctions kind of blur.
Okay.
So the sage, by tuning into that, doesn't need to constantly judge everything. They can just let things be, let them unfold. Like he says, right is not right, so is not so. If you stop arguing about it, the sharp edges disappear.
So let go of the labels.
Yeah, let go of the need to constantly categorize and define. He invites us to leap into the boundless.
That phrase, leap into the boundless. It reminds me of that other story, the one about Huizi and the huge gourd.
Ah, yes.
He just saw it as useless because it wasn't good for making ladles or water containers, the normal gourd things, so he smashed it.
Exactly. Now, Zhuangzi's direct reply isn't in this specific piece you sent, but the lesson is totally there. Huizi's stuck.
Stuck in his own assumptions.
Stuck in his limited view of what's useful. He couldn't imagine any other possibility for the gourd. And that's the nudge for you, listening. Are there things you've dismissed, things you thought were useless or irrelevant, that maybe, just maybe, have a different kind of value if you just tilt your head and look again?
It's that perspective shift again, seeing potential where you first saw nothing or just a problem.
Precisely.
And that kind of leads into this idea of the natural way of things versus trying to force things. The image of the wind, the breath of the great clod.
Yeah, beautiful imagery.
Blowing through all the holes and hollows, making all sorts of sounds, nature just doing its thing.
It's so vivid, isn't it?
Yeah.
It shows how dynamic and expressive nature is, all without anyone trying to make it happen. It just happens. Then contrast that with the poor guy from Song trying to sell fancy ceremonial hats.
Yeah.
To the people of Yu who shave their heads and tattoo their bodies, they had zero use for them.
None at all.
It's just a perfect little fable about how pointless it is to force your ideas, your products, your system onto a situation where it just doesn't fit, where the underlying nature of things is completely different.
Like swimming upstream, fighting the current. So for us, trying to learn or understand stuff, maybe the lesson is don't just try to cram information into some rigid box you've decided on.
Exactly. Maybe it's more effective to try and understand the natural connections, the inherent logic of the subject itself. Work with it rather than against it.
Adapt to how things actually are.
Yeah, it's way more efficient and probably less frustrating.
Okay, finally, this brings us to living in that flow, living according to the way, and the story of cookting. Wow. Carving up the ox, it's mesmerizing.
Isn't it? It's become such a classic illustration of this Daoist ideal.
It's not about hacking away with force. It's about understanding, seeing the spaces between the joints.
That's the key. He goes by the natural makeup, follows the great crevices. His knife finds the empty spaces. He's not fighting the ox's structure. He's flowing with it. It's effortless skill born from deep, deep understanding.
And even when he gets to tricky bits, the complicated places.
He slows down. He's cautious, subtle. His movements are tiny, precise. He feels his way through. It's mastery, but it's also humility, respect for the structure he's working with.
Flop, the whole thing comes apart like a clod of earth crumbling to the ground. That image is incredible. Pure flow.
Yeah, it really is. And then the Lord, Wen Hui, he watches this and has this epiphany.
Yeah, he says, from the words of Cook Ding, I have learned how to care for life.
Amazing, right? He learns this profound lesson about living, about nurturing life itself, not from a scholar or a priest, but from watching a butcher who truly understands his craft and moves in harmony with the nature of the ox.
It just shows that wisdom can pop up anywhere, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
that real skill, real care comes from respecting and working with the way things are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so wrapping this up for you, the learner. Wow, lots to think about. We've touched on how Zhuangzi makes us question language itself, the huge importance of trying to see from other perspectives,
Uh-huh. The relativity of it all.
how our judgments can be kind of illusory based on framing, like the acorns. The idea that things we dismiss as useless, like the gourd, might have hidden value.
Don't smash the gourd.
Don't smash the gourd. And the wisdom of going with the flow, aligning with the natural order like the wind, or instead of forcing things like the hat salesman. And finally, that incredible effortless skill that comes from really deep understanding.
Yeah, that's a good summary. It may be a final thought for you to chew on.
Yeah.
Think about your own life, your own understanding. Are there places where you hold really fixed distinctions?
Mm.
Strong judgments about right, wrong, useless?
Mm.
Could there be a hinge point there, a different perspective you haven't considered that might just unlock a more flexible, maybe easier way of responding to things?
Yeah, maybe something you've written off actually holds a key insight if you just looked at it differently. Or maybe situations where you're pushing really hard, trying to force an outcome.
Mm.
Perhaps there's a more natural way, understanding the underlying dynamics first. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Well, and that's the goal, right? This deep dive, it's really just meant as a starting point for your own exploration. These Zhuangzi ideas, they're ancient, but they feel incredibly fresh. There's so much there to keep exploring in your own experience.